Once the skunks took over in Encinitas, it was time to evacuate.
Altogether, because these are two babies. Look.
So on September 15, 2018, courtesy of British Airways, we survived Heathrow and made it to Cork. Of course, we immediately did some Monkstown Bay viewing, but had very little time, as within a few days we were headed to Dublin for the golden anniversary of Niall's graduation. UCD definitely put on an impressive show. But it was the epic dinner party at Jerry Kenny's which put a cap on the occasion.
All the rising sun.
We could have 3 points. We could have been a contender.
On many a one boy.
It's been reported that all the participants have recovered by now, but Alan Brennan's condition is less certain. Pretty soon we were back to Cork things. Feeding the crows, morning discussions with the herons, and antics with Moira's kids. But then it was circus time, and the Moscow State Circus put on quite a show. Yes, of course we did some serious eating and more Monkstown observations. But then came time for the Dingle Food Festival. As all of you know, Dingle has become a gourmet centre in Ireland, so we felt it couldn't be ignored when it conducted its annual food festival, complete with over 80 food organisations participating. Margaret's brother Ty came along, as he's got a history of that part of the country and a history of eating also. After an epic meal in the Lord Baker restaurant that night, we took the opportunity the next day to look around the area, including the Blasket Islands, shut for the winter, and examined the Star Wars figures in Ballyferriter made from car tires. Finally, we also visited the South Pole Inn in Annisquel, retirement home of the noted polar explorer Tom Crean, who participated in both Scott and Shackleton's Antarctic expeditions and was a member of Shackleton's small boat voyage to South Georgia Island. Next up, we travelled to Townley House, north of Dublin, where Niall's brother Dermot had been an organiser of one of Ireland's most significant antique auctions. We scrutinised the goods, including this €300,000 Spanish Armada table, but resisted the temptations. Now we flew to Glasgow and headed west to Ayrshire. There we visited old Niall haunts, overnighting in the seaside resort of Largs, and particularly visiting Niall's old home in Kilwinning. then to possibly Britain's most beautiful city, Edinburgh, and thence to Northumberland in England, where we visited the tidal island of Lindisfarne and the castle of Bamberg. Then some more Edinburgh and directly back to Cork. Two critically important things happened in Ayrshire. One was ice cream in Nardini's. The second was a photo op for Niall at his old pad in Kilwinning. We also had the opportunity to take in some very typical sunsets at Ardross, including a great view of the Ailsa Craig. Next day we hit the road to Edinburgh, and naturally our first port of call was the Royal Yacht Britannia, now retired. The ship travelled the world and played a significant part in royal family events like honeymoons or state visits. But we pushed on and gave Edinburgh a good look. We passed the Greyfriars Bobby pub, the dog who guarded his owner's grave for 14 years until he passed himself. Incidentally, San Diego is twinned with Edinburgh and has a park with a statue of Greyfriars Bobby in the Gaslight area. That evening, we had a fun dinner with a group of Austrian students near our hotel. The following morning, we drove the 70 miles to the tidal island of Lindisfarne, where we crossed the causeway during the window that the tides allowed. Lindisfarne, founded by the Irish monk St. Aidan about 635, was the major centre of learning in the north of England and is the source of the Lindisfarne Gospels, the first English translation of the Gospels in existence. The monastery was the first to be attacked by the Vikings in 793, an attack which ushered in the Viking era. So we toured the various museums and ruins and headed off for an unplanned visit to Bamberg Castle, which we'd spotted over 10 miles away from Lindisfarne. This castle turned out to be the surprise of the trip. Originally a Celtic fort, in 420 it became the seat of the dominant Saxon king of northern England, and subsequently went through an extensive history until it became the property of Henry II in 1146. In 1464, during the War of the Roses, it became the first castle in England to fall to artillery at the end of a 9-month siege. In 1894, it was bought by the Armstrong family, who continue to own it today. So we toured the magnificent castle, including negotiating with the Netflix team who were surveying the castle for an upcoming series. But we were out of there, especially once we saw the dungeons. And in a flash, we were participating fully in the Edinburgh nightlife. Next day, we just had time to survey both of the famous fort bridges. The railway bridge opened in 1890, at the time the longest single cantilever bridge in the world, and the road bridge opened in 1964 as the longest suspension bridge in the world. Then we were off to the airport and directly back to Cork. So we thought we'd have a few quiet days around Cork, but it was not to be, as we forgot the Cork Jazz Festival was upon us. This is quite a well-known event worldwide, which has had many illustrious participants over the years. The festival is held simultaneously in numerous locations, including former churches, concert halls, and up to 80 pubs. Yes, a pretty wild scene, but we were up to anything they threw at us. So next up was Dylan Conway's wedding, held in a nice country house near the River Shannon. Overall, it was a swell affair and a nice opportunity for family to get together.
So I ask you in front of everybody here today, have you come here of your own free will and choice and without compulsion to marry each other?
We have.
All that remained at this point were some runs to West Cork and a bit of playing with Niall's drone. And before you could say Jack Robinson, we were over the US once again and descending into a lovely San Diego sunset.